how pathetic I am. I was sitting in one of the lockers in a girl's locker room recording Stacy, the school's reigning beauty, on my phone. I have zero chances, but I still dreamed of dating her. It was a pity that Stacy had changed too quickly and was about to leave with the other cheerleaders. But now I can finally move. My back hurts terribly. Everyone's gone. I pushed the locker door open, but it wouldn't budge. I kicked at the door for 20 minutes with all my might until I was completely exhausted, and then I was overcome by panic. The door was firmly jammed. Heck, I think I'm stuck in the women's locker room. A panic attack hit me. It's Friday, everyone's gone. No one will be here for the next 2 days. I'm going to die of hunger and thirst. Then I took my phone out of my pocket and tried to call a friend, but there was no connection in this iron box. I began frantically feeling the shelves of the locker. Bingo! I found a nail file and forged the lock with it. It started to open, but the nail file suddenly slipped out through the crack and clattered to the floor of the locker room. At that very moment, someone came into the locker room. It was Olivia, the headmaster's daughter, the creepy girl who's been sending me Valentines since first grade. But damn it, I was glad to see her today. She's my chance to get out of here, and she's not going to turn me in. I wanted to call her, but Olivia looked around and went to pretty Stacy's locker. She definitely broke the lock with a hairpin. The headmaster's daughter turned out to be a thief. Wow, I tried to see what she's doing. But at the moment I hit the wall of the locker, Olivia started to shout in surprise and ask who was there. I immediately asked her to release me. A little taken back, Olivia went to the locker and started opening it. This time, she couldn't open the lock so easily. Finally, the lock clicked and the locker opened. It seems that when she saw me, Olivia even blushed. She didn't expect it to be me. But just as I was trying to get out, I noticed that she was recording me on the phone. What's that for? Everyone in the school will see this video if you refuse to help me, she replied. Olivia, what the heck do you want from me? Olivia said we couldn't go to the main exit right now because the cameras would catch us, and that's the true evidence. Stop. So what she's up to is also illegal? Olivia went on. We have to go down the drain pipe so that no one will notice. I nervously laughed. Olivia, are you out of your mind? I said it was too much. I wouldn't do it. But Olivia showed me a video of me sitting in a locker with a stupid face with my arm around a dusty bra. She didn't seem to be joking at all. I looked out of the window and glanced at the pipe. It was old and rusty. It did not inspire confidence at all. You go first quickly, Olivia said. I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't notice how I was outside with my arms wrapped around the pipe. There were 5 floors underfoot. One move and we're off. What did I get myself into? When my feet hit the ground, I couldn't believe we did it. A few seconds later, Olivia came down. So now I've fulfilled your plan, I blurted out. Almost, said Olivia. There's only one little thing left. You should go to Stacy's house and talk to her for about 10 minutes. But Stacy is the girl I dream of. I was taken aback. What is this nonsense? She won't even listen to me. Olivia, what are you up to? She stood so close and looked at me like that I even thought she again wanted to tell me she loved me. Gosh, Olivia, this isn't the right time. But she pulled away and just reminded me to hurry. If we're late, you already know what the consequences will be, she added. We walked to Stacy's house in silence. I still didn't know what to say to the girl I wanted to talk to every day. Maybe I should just pretend to ring the doorbell and lie that no one was home. But Olivia seemed to read my mind and she said she'd be watching me from around the corner. When we reached the house, I timidly went up the steps and rang the bell. Olivia went around the corner of the house and hid there. Stacy opened up the door and asked me what I was doing there. I hesitated, but then noticed that Olivia was trying to climb through a window on the first floor. Stacy snapped that if I'd just come to stand there, I could do it from across the street. What a shame. So I started talking nonsense about doing a biology project with Stacy, planting seeds of rare species, and then monitoring their growth. Stacy looked at me like I was an idiot and said that I was a rare species myself and that I needed to be examined by the doctors. But I was still talking that nonsense, I noticed Olivia was scrambling back. Whew, thank God Stacy didn't turn around. I'll come back some other time, I said quickly. I turned around and went around the corner of the house where Olivia was waiting for me. I wanted to yell, but I couldn't make any noise. And I just said I hated her for making me look like an idiot in front of my crush. Olivia looked at me and said, "Do you hate me?" Then she sighed and said that we often hate the wrong people. What's she talking about? Then Olivia told me that it wasn't her I should hate, but Stacy. She had done a terrible thing. Stacy had long been a rival to Olivia's friend Teresa. 2 months ago, right on the eve of the city's cheerleading competition, Stacy pushed Teresa at rehearsals. After that, Teresa couldn't even get up. The doctor said it was a spinal fracture. There was even required a surgery, but Teresa didn't have the money. It all looked like an accident, so Stacy refused to help. But Olivia knew how it really was. She went to the police, but they said there was not enough evidence and just her words were not enough. So Olivia decided to do justice herself, sneak into Stacy's house and steal her money. And at the same time, she'd teach her a lesson. I was taken aback. Olivia's eyes were wild. She was crazy. It really could have been an accident. Maybe it wasn't Stacy's fault at all. I said we had to get the money back. But Olivia screamed that Stacy had deliberately pushed Teresa and had to pay for it. At that moment, I knew Olivia was dangerous. I had to do something about it. I said a hasty goodbye, walked away, and called the police. I was sure I was doing the right thing. The cops came quickly. Olivia hadn't gone far yet, and she was detained. I went with them as a witness. We spent 3 hours at the station. Just as I was starting to fall asleep in my chair, Stacy bursted into the room. She threw her arms around me and enthusiastically told me that I was now her hero. I couldn't believe my luck. I held Stacy tight, but she pulled away. Looked at Olivia and said that now she was definitely finished. When Olivia was taken away for questioning, Stacy and I were left alone, and then I asked if it was true that she pushed her opponent on the competition eve. Stacy said that the Rebels should know their place, and that she knows how to take revenge without being noticed. I was taken aback. That is, it was you who pushed Teresa? Stacy just grinned. What a rascal she was. How could I have a crush on her? At that moment, Olivia was led past us in handcuffs. I rushed to the policemen and demanded them to release Olivia. This is all a mistake, a huge mistake. But no one listened to me, and now I'm sitting in court. In a few minutes, the jury will sentence Olivia. During the investigation, Olivia didn't give me away. It turned out that she, unlike me, knows how to keep her words. When I was called as a witness at the trial, I stated that I had not seen Olivia that night. I knew I had to try to change everything. In the hall, I noticed the school's headmaster, Olivia's dad. He was crying. I've never seen him like this before. It was unbearably painful to watch. The jury went out to confer. Every second seemed like an eternity to me. Finally, they announced their decision. Olivia was given 2 months of community service for breaking into Stacy's house. I was also sent to sort garbage for making false statements. And so, on the eve of Valentine's Day, we are forced to collect empty bottles on the track. Not the most romantic thing, but what else can we do? During the time we spent together, I realized how cool Olivia was. I took a Valentine card out of my pocket and handed it to Olivia. She smiled and asked, "So, do you actually care about me?" It was actually a friendly gesture. But for a second, I wondered if I really did. Olivia has become something more to me during this time.
I went on stage in the auditorium dressed as a ghost to get revenge on my killer, Mark. He was practicing on the piano that day. I touched his shoulder. "Why did you kill me?" He turned around and when he saw me, he fainted. What the hell was I supposed to do now? He didn't wake up. I didn't think it would end like this. It all started from the day when the school announced the reporting concert. It should bring together the best musicians of the country. Wow. They would choose one student who would enter the Academy of Music without exams, and it would definitely be me. Then I would finally move out from my parents who punished me even for one beat in solfeggio. The only time they didn't yell at me was during my peanut allergy attacks. I even learned how to use it. It was a way to avoid punishment somehow. And always carried a couple of nuts with me just in case. The music teacher's voice distracted me. Meet the new guy, Mark. He's a brilliant pianist. What? What Mark? I turned around and saw a tall, curly-haired guy standing in front of me. I pretended to be pleased to meet him, and then the teacher added, "Mark will be performing at the reporting concert. What about me?" This new guy wanted to take my place? Then the teacher offered to solve everything honestly, prepare the performances, and tomorrow I will choose who will play at the concert, all day at school. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What would I tell my parents? They would blow me up. And so, when they came back to pick me up after school, I hesitantly said that there was another pianist in the class. And tomorrow, the teacher would choose which of us would go to the concert. But my parents shouted why a novice bypassed me so easily. It seemed to me that Dad even swung. Wait, it's not my fault. Something had to be done about it. And then I remembered that I had peanuts in my pocket, especially for such cases. I quickly swallowed the nut, and in the same second, my face swelled up. My mom, in a panic, dragged me into the air. It worked. At that moment, Mark was passing by the parking lot. Heck, I didn't want that creep to see me like this. But this upstart just looked at us. He also ironically asked what was wrong with me. Mom replied that it was all because of the peanuts apparently. I had eaten something wrong at school. Mark snorted angrily, and I just got in the car quickly. Don't laugh at me. At home, I spent the whole evening thinking about how to get around this creep at the concert, and by morning, I was determined. Mark had no chance. I would perform better, and I would go to the music academy for my crazy parents. I was walking down the school hallway when I heard Mark's voice from the staff room. He shyly asked to play with a notebook today, as he had not yet learned the notes. How pathetic he was. But suddenly I had an idea. If I stole his notebook, Mark wouldn't be able to play. I ran to the dressing room. Mark's briefcase and notebook were probably there. I slipped into the dressing room and looked around, but at the same moment, footsteps were heard outside the door. Damn it. Then Mark came into the dressing room. He looked at me incredulously and asked me what I was doing there, gritting my teeth. I lied about wanting to wish him luck. Mark shrugged and reached for the backpack in his locker. And at that moment, I hugged him. Mark, it's going to work. And while Mark was muttering in confusion, I definitely took the sheet music out of his backpack. Now let's look at your talent. I quickly went to the gym. I couldn't wait to see Mark disgrace himself. He sat down at the piano and started to look for his notebook in his backpack. But of course, he found nothing. This was hilarious. Then Mark got up and said he couldn't play tonight. And then he went backstage. Ha! Did I win so easily? My performance, of course, was flawless. The teacher congratulated me on my victory. The place at the concert was mine. Suddenly, Mark called me backstage and said he had something for me. A prize for the one who beat him in a fair fight. Unexpected. Mark immediately handed me a large chocolate cream cake. He said he wanted to please himself with it if he won. But now it was mine. The cake looked so delicious that I immediately took a bite, and in the same second, my face began to swell. Were there peanuts in there? How could you, Mark? It was getting dark in my eyes. This had never happened to me before. Apparently, there were too many nuts in the cakes. My legs gave way and the teacher immediately ran up to me. The last thing I heard was him saying that if I did get better, Mark would have to perform in my place. And I blacked out. I came to my senses in the hospital. My parents were standing next to my bed, furious. They scolded me for eating that stupid cake. I could forget about playing the piano in the near future. When my parents left the room, tears were already welling up in my eyes. Now they wouldn't take me to the academy, and I wouldn't move out of my parents' house. My slavery would be eternal. I had to somehow force this scoundrel to abandon the performance. I needed dirt. I immediately reached for the phone and studied Mark's Facebook page. He often reposted creepy ghost stories on his wall, so he believed in them. And so he was afraid of them. Stop. I could try to pretend that I died in the hospital after his trick with the cake. I would pretend to be a ghost. I would haunt Mark. And then I would tell him that if he wanted to live, he would have to give up performing. He didn't see any other way out, so I immediately rushed to the doctors. I tearfully asked them to let me out of the hospital. I really needed to play at the concert. The head doctor agreed, despite the fact that I still didn't look well. I promised that I would stay at home, but I immediately went to school, and in the first lesson, I snuck into the men's room. There I wrote in red lipstick on the mirror, "Mark, give up." After that, I hid and waited for Mark to come in here. I watched his reaction, but Mark just laughed. I needed another plan. Then I decided that I would really scare him. At night, I would climb into Mark's house in a ghost costume and shout that he had to give up the concert. Let him know that the ghosts didn't want to mess with him. So after school, I followed Mark to his house. The road seemed endless. How far away he lived, not like me. In 2 hours, we reached the poorest part of the city. Mark walked over to the house, which looked more like a barn. Did he live here? I couldn't believe it. As soon as Mark was inside, I peeked cautiously through the window. It was full of children in racks. And I complained about my folks. It looked like Mark's life was even worse. I was so eager to get a better look at the shack that I didn't notice when I stepped on a plastic bottle. There was a crunch. I hoped they didn't hear me. And then a man in the room became suspicious and said that he had heard about a thief who was in the area. It was Mark's father. He added that now he would have to stay up until morning and guard the house. Heck, I could imagine listening to my parents' reproaches for the rest of my life if I didn't go to the academy, and the chill ran down my spine. So I decided to go straight to the general rehearsal. Tomorrow, this was my last chance. In the morning, I powdered my face white and even ate a piece of peanut to get puffy again. Now I looked like a ghost. I hid behind the scenes and was waiting for Mark. Here he was, finally. It was now or never. I crept up behind him while he was busy playing. I even listened for a few seconds, but then I remembered why I had come. And I hissed, "Mark, why did you kill me?" As soon as he saw me, Mark turned white and fell to the floor. Panic gripped me as I knelt down and tried to bring him to his senses. "Wake up! I'm all right! I'm alive!" At that, Mark opened his eyes a crack and immediately jumped to his feet. How glad I was! But he only shouted, "Take your place, just don't come any closer," and ran out of the hall. In the morning, I immediately ran to the music teacher's office. I had just been discharged and I was ready to perform. The teacher was glad that I recovered so quickly because the concert was on the verge of failure. It turned out that Mark's parents took his documents from school last night. They were tired of spending money on such nonsense as music. The concert was his last chance to prove that Mark was worth something. But at the last moment, Mark refused to play. Now he will be transferred to a school at a local factory, which is a pity, because he is a great pianist. The teacher finished. Suddenly I felt very ashamed. Mark was a great player, even better than I was. But what could I do now? It was 2 hours before the concert and I quickly ran to Mark's house. I knocked, but no one answered for a long time. Finally, Mark appeared in the doorway. He stared at me in surprise. "What are you doing here?" I grabbed his arm and pulled him along. "The concert is today and you have to perform in my place." But Mark resisted and would not go. Then I blurted out, "I'm sorry. I didn't know this concert was so important to you." And yet, in a fair fight, you still won. An hour later, Mark and I were standing backstage, waiting for my turn to come out. Mark asked me anxiously if I was sure I didn't want to. I nodded and silently pushed Mark onto the stage. I watched from the backstage. Mark played beautifully, as if he had been preparing for his performance all his life. When he finished, the audience erupted in applause. He was immediately offered a place at the academy. Something inside me skipped a beat. I'd wanted to go to the academy for so long, but Mark deserved it. And then someone called out to me. It was our music teacher. He came closer and modestly handed me a piece of paper. "What is it?" I looked closely. It was an invitation to study at the academy. "But how is this possible?" The teacher replied that he always considered me his best student, so he asked for places in the academy for the two of us. Tears of joy filled my eyes. Now I was going to the academy along with Mark. I couldn't believe it. I kept trying to come up with some insidious plans, and it turned out that the main thing was to always remain human. And life would put everything in its place. I looked at Mark and suggested we celebrate our victory with something sweet. But no peanuts. He smiled back at me. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you.